Kia ora koutou whānau, ki te pia koe. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Hello, hey! Chewy.
Hello.
How are you, man?
Hello.
Look at me, dressed like a grown-up. I'm not wearing a T-shirt. I don't have a hood on. One of the first times ever.
That's weird. Don't like it.
Just wearing my rod and gun top. I'm a grown-up. I'm pretending to be a grown-up.
Rod.
Before I see, we lost it already. Rod. Kia ora whānau. Hey, so lovely to be back with you. So good to see so many of you lunatics being in the chat. What did you say? How long have they been in the chat for, Chewy?
The first chat this evening was at 8:02.
Yeah.
With I can't wait for the show to begin.
Adorable. Well done, everybody.
That is commitment.
Hey, Rob Burney calling me Steve Jobs. I'll take the money side of things. It's not a polar neck, though. It's not a polar neck. It's just a... Don't mock me or I'll have to take it off and put a hoodie on. I've got hoodies just here on the floor because that's much of a slob I am. How are you, team? Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one tonight. And look, I got to say, a bit of a mea culpa from the start. And those of you who follow me on Twitter will have already seen this tweet. I spent a huge portion of today trying to fucking figure out how to do this Winston Peters story. Winston Peters on Q&A. And what I thought as I was going through, I went, oh, I know what I'll do. Oh, no. I'll just go through and I'll edit. I'll download it off YouTube.
Easy.
And I'll edit together all the parts that he didn't answer questions. And I'll be able to play like a 3-minute clip for everybody. And this is what I ended up with. So the blue bits are the interview and the brown or the grey bits or black bits in the middle of the bits I've cut out. As you can see, like 80% of the file is still there. Probably more than 80% of the file is still there. So that was going to be my edit from a 26-minute interview as to when he either couldn't or wouldn't answer questions or was pushing back with irrelevant kind of comments. So I really kind of went into a deep state of depression after that. Realized I couldn't just come up here and play you a 24-minute highlight reel of a 26-minute interview. And I eventually did do one. So I actually cut that way back. And I think the clip that I put out, hang on, let me just bring it up because it's in here somewhere. That's us live, is 6.5 minutes. And that does not do it justice.
Unbelievable.
And that 6.5 minutes, that doesn't include the last question, which is the worst part of all. When he threatens TVNZ. And I don't give a flying fuck if people go, oh, he was just joking. He made a threat against Jack Tame and TVNZ to become someone who was no longer impartial as a standover tactic against TVNZ. And after this weekend's show, and look, I'll put my hand up and say I've been a part of the problem. Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. Forgive me, Chewy, for I've sinned. I've said probably on this podcast, he's great fun to interview. Like Winston is great fun to interview. Because he pushes back and he goes places and he always does that laugh at the end. But after watching him this weekend, and it's in the title of this episode, he is New Zealand's Donald Trump. I have no question of that. The race baiting, the bullshit that he doesn't believe, and the way he's treating the media. He is so this is Donald Trump, right? When Donald Trump gets into presidency, he's going to go after the media companies. He's stated that. And he's stated that he's going to go after the media companies who haven't been kind to him. This is what the presumptive nominee for the Republicans is saying. And that's exactly what fucking Winston Peters said to Jack Tame over the weekend. And then he tried to backpedal. Like, well, it's an idea, isn't it? It's like, no. You are New Zealand's Donald Trump. So later on tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to play you the first part of the interview, which is him talking about corrections, and the last part of the interview, which is him threatening TVNZ. And the river of filth in between, the 19.5 to 20 minutes in between, you'll have to go and suffer through yourselves. I know we always say it. I watch it so you don't have to, but there was so much. Like every single question we could have spent a 4-minute clip and a 10-minute talk about. Every single question. It is the most repulsive I have. And remember, we've had David Seymour, but this was the most repulsive I have ever seen a politician in an interview. Now, I don't think some of the things he was saying were as ugly and as dangerous as what we're hearing out of the likes of David Seymour in that moment, but the way he was speaking, the way he was treating the questions, the arrogance of him not wanting pushback. He actually, you know what, in his head, he was this close to walking out. I kind of wish he had have. But the arrogance of it was the most revolting interview I've ever seen. And I used to work for News Talk ZB, so I've seen a few of them. And this was the most revolting. I mean, do you want to, I've got lots of other things to talk about first, Chewy, but do you want to just, we're not going to start with that, but is there any kind of little
I'm just going to preface it a little bit. Look, I think Jack Tame's been knocking it out of the park in the run out to this this election. I have watched either the entirety or big chunks of all of his interviews with political leaders.
Yep.
I think one of the things that I've liked about it is that he has spared nobody. Like, everyone got their feet held to the fire, and every question, every setup he had an answer for, and he backed it. And this is one of the few outlets that I've seen that happen. Like, there's so many like these guys are going on The Rock and mainstream radio, you know, all of these sort of things, getting softball questions and just, you know, it tells you nothing. It's puffery. Jack Tame has gone into combat with these guys, and I would say that going in against Winston, who is famously combative with reporters, that he was ready for war.
I think Winston was a bit taken aback. I mean, I've interviewed him probably 8 times. I have never seen such long pauses. One of the things about Winston, when you interview him, he has a recall. He's got a mind like a steel trap. He'll bring things back like. But there was a few times where he was doing that whole, hey, we're not going to have amateur hour, and Jack would just continue on. So the difference with this one, and I'll put myself in the category of having to kind of kowtow from time to time to Winston because he's formidable, is that Winston didn't control that interview, and that's not what you normally see. Like, it's not what you normally see, and he refused to answer stuff, so Jack just moved on to the next thing. So we're going to show you the first question, which is him talking about corrections, and in question number 1, where he goes, how much is it going to cost? From that moment on, it becomes argumentative. And Winston Peters starts going on and on and on and on and on and on and on about the viewing audience and how they aren't being served well. And Jack is just saying, how much? What are the numbers? Where's the policy? That's pretty much the interview again and again and again and again. And he has no answer. Like I don't know if a single piece of policy came out. Like, no answers. It was a fascinating watch. It'll be one of those ones that'll go into like journalistic like courses. Here's how you interview someone who's not giving you any answers. I'll tell you something I did today, Chewy, and we might look into it tomorrow. I've contacted some like reputable, some people who work in the area of body language and reading bodies and reading that. And I've asked if someone would come on and talk about that interview, because Winston's mouth is not telling us anything. So I wonder what his body's telling us. Like, what's his body language saying?
He's unhappy. It's tired and he needs a nap.
Yeah, maybe. All right. Yeah, sorry. Were you going to say something before I moved on?
Oh, I was just going to say one more point. There's one thing as we hit these interviews that when Winston is pushed, his tactic, as I see it, is to just shotgun the bullshit out.
Yeah.
Get really, really combative and just baffle you with bullshit.
Yeah.
So hold that in your mind as we watch some of those clips.
Yeah. Right. We've kind of started already talking about Winston, which is hard not to at the moment. But let me just tell you, I experienced a very cool movie over the weekend. On Mondays, we often tell you about what's happening over the weekend. Have you seen Chewy, Landscape with Invisible Hand?
No.
Yeah, no, really interesting flick. And it's particularly interesting at the moment because it kind of talks to that whole celebrity culture of people getting famous for just being famous. In a near future in which an alien species known as the Vuv have taken over Earth, an aspiring teenage artist and his girlfriend hatch a scheme to make money by broadcasting their dating life to the fascinated aliens in the wake of the Vuv's labor-saving technology. But the two teens slowly come to hate each other and cannot break up without bankrupting their families. It's had pretty average reviews, Rotten Tomatoes and that kind of stuff. But actually, I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. And it speaks at the moment to the idea of celebrity culture. It speaks to the idea of interruption. So the VUV, these are these guys over here. This is the alien here. They kind of come down to Earth they're going through the galaxy helping planets be better, or so they say. It ends up that their like labor-saving devices means nobody has to work. And then, of course, nobody's got no money. And then, of course, everyone becomes homeless. And it goes on and on and on. But the VIV are trying to tell the story that they're bringing happiness to this species. I won't tell you any more than that, really, because I don't want to give it away. But it's a really interesting one. And so these two, this boy and this girl, they start to stream their relationship, kind of like they're on Twitch, and get given money by the VIV who watch them, who don't have any emotions. They can't have love, but they're intrigued by human love. And then within this relationship, it starts to get sour and it starts to break up. And I just thought about, I'm a bit of a tragic for some of those makeover shows. And there's been examples of like husbands and wife doing makeover shows, and then they get a divorce. And the year after the divorce, they try and kind of continue the show on because it's making them money, but you can see it, all the magic is gone, sort of thing. So yeah, if you're interested, Landscape with Invisible Hand. Okay. The critics give it kind of a B plus, like a 75 rating if you go to Rotten Tomatoes. I liked it though. I thought it was kind of cool. I did think it was kind of cool. One other thing to tell you about as well is we've got some bad news for you BHNers, and that is we've dropped off #1 in the charts.
What?
Now,
who's responsible for this?
I spent the weekend emailing various political figures going, look, I know it's only 2 weeks to go, but we are the #1 news commentary podcast in the country. So if you're going to come and chat with anyone, you should come and chat with us if you're looking to get a few more numbers. And actually, if you're watching Chippy, you're going to be in your hotel for a few days doing nothing with your wee COVID there. Come and see us tomorrow night. So along the bottom of the screen at the moment, the audio podcast, #BHN to look for us on Google, Spotify, and Apple. And if you do want to help out and feel so called in life, then we would appreciate you listening to us on Apple, because this is where the Apple charts come from. Let me say one other thing. If you have picked us up and you have started listening to this audio podcast, if you're listening to that audio podcast right now, give us a rate and a review, because there are a few people out there who want to see us not do so well, who are actively trying to rate us down. I know, because they've told us. So they're going in and they're giving it 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, 1 star. We're fine. We're like 4.8. But I'm just saying, if you are someone who's listening to us on Apple Podcasts, rate and review as well would be fantastic, I think. Anyway, just letting you know, Whānau, like we are you and you are us. Don't you want to say you listen to the #1 news commentary podcast in the country? I think you should. Apple Podcast, #BHN. Is that enough selling my soul, Chewy?
That was pretty thorough and relentless.
Shall I sell it one more time? Before we kickstart the show, for real, a huge thanks to all our patrons. Thank you so much for coming on board. Genuinely, really appreciate what you do. And we've had several people sign up in the last wee while. I think I mentioned Aidan last week. I think he signed up. But Michael Gray and Nicole Abernethy joined on to the fuel layer. Chris McLaren joined on to the coffee runners there as well. And I get a bit confused as to when everyone joined, but I'm pretty sure Chris Rowley. Maybe I've already shouted out Chris one time as well. So if you're interested in helping us do what we do, then you can head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And look, if this is you, I would, but I'm poor. No problems whatsoever. Then how you can help us is to spread the word. Be our advocate. That's the other thing. Tell people this Thursday the best place to watch the all parties debate is with the boys from BHN. So be our advocate. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts and spread the word. Easy as. I know everyone's got limited budgets and stuff, and look, I don't want to be arrogant enough to say you must. It's like, just what you can do, and everyone can bring a friend, can't they, Chewy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bring a friend to the party. All right. I think we'll do Winston in the second half of the show. So why don't we have a look at the news? I'm just having a look which way we're going to go. Let's have a look at the news. Let's have a look at the news from today, which is talking about Chippy and his COVID, and the headline news from this evening's news as to where all the political news you need to know. Let's have a look what's going on.
This now, kia ora, Jess. What's the latest from Labor's leader in isolation?
It is a pretty unusual situation to have the leader of one of our two main political parties in isolation rather than out in the thick of the campaign. He told me he's pretty frustrated. There's no doubt that this is a blow to his campaign. I talked to Chris Hipkins over Zoom. He's isolating in a hotel, and I started off by asking him how he was holding up.
I should tell you, I've taken a lot of drugs to do this interview. It started to come on Saturday night, and by Sunday morning I was sort of a bit wiped out by it. So, the full body aches and congestion and coughs and the whole works. And today the body aches have eased and a little bit of energy is coming back, but as you can probably hear, there's still quite a lot of congestion.
Is this a nail in the coffin for the campaign? Your polls aren't great and now you're not able to get out and about like you usually would.
Absolutely not. We're still getting incredibly strong support on the ground. Our door knockers, our phone canvassers, they're reporting back that, there's still a lot of goodwill out there. There's still a lot of undecided vote out there. And of course, it's frustrating that I can't be out there speaking to some of those undecided voters. But I'm hoping that I'll be able to reach them, in a digital forum in the next few days.
I mean, campaigns are all about momentum. They're all about doing things that get you on the 6 o'clock news each night, and you've lost that for the next few days at least. How do you feel about that?
Well, campaigns are about momentum, but actually more importantly, they're about what you stand for and about the values and the ideas that you're campaigning on. And none of that's changed because I'm isolating in a hotel room with COVID-19. I think that we're putting forward a very optimistic, vision for the future of the country. And if I do talk about the opposition, I think that they're not, and what they are doing is walking away from all of the tough questions. So I guess it's a bit frustrating that I can't be there on the campaign trail to challenge them a little bit more on that in the next few days. But there's still more time for that before this campaign is over.
So what do you reckon, Chewy? Do you reckon this is a blow? Do you reckon it matters at all? Do you reckon Chippy not being out there is going to be damaging, or is he right? Is it really just about the message is I guess what he's saying is the message is the most important thing, isn't he?
It is. I can't imagine it helping, but I also don't think that it's absolutely devastating. Like he's come off a pretty dominant debate last week.
Yeah.
They seem to have got over their speed wobbles. It's disappointing that he's not able to do the Christchurch stuff debate. And I note with interest that Luxon has very eagerly pulled the pin.
We're going to play a story around that we'll play a story around that as well. We got that to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. But look, if I was on the campaign trail and came down with COVID right when polls open, I'd be spewing.
Yeah.
Like that's dreadful timing.
I did think about getting Anna Brooks on with us tonight because it kind of is a COVID headline. I've got COVID in the family at the moment. Not actually, that's not entirely accurate. One of my kids has COVID, who is with her mother at the moment. Someone else in that household had COVID, and my younger one didn't get it. And it just made me think. And I went to an appointment at hospital on Thursday, a follow up from the surgery I had to want to check in. And I was talking to the woman doing the scan, and she said, "Oh yeah, COVID's rife in Dunedin at the moment." And I was in the supermarket today and yesterday, and I just looked around. I'm just like, no one gives a fuck. And look, the only people I'm seeing in masks are elderly. Good on you, and the odd checkout operator or the retail assistant who's obviously coming into contact with 500 people a day, so fair enough too. But this is now yesterday's story. I mean, the story is he can't go out because of COVID, but there's no story about, hey, by the way, COVID's pretty bad at the moment in location X. It's just a non-issue. I'm obviously not saying it's as serious as it was, kind of 12, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, but it's still out there, eh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I'm doing some international travel in January. One of the things that I'm concerned with is like there's been no update on the vaccine that's available here in New Zealand, even though there's new strains overseas and stuff like that. I think, yeah.
But the story you just talked about, the not wanting to do the I'm going to hold my judgment on that, because I know, like, I have a personal relationship, not necessarily friendship, with some of these leaders, right? And you probably know the ones I mean, the ones that I was texting the other night when we were watching the debate. And they can't find time in their calendar to come and talk to us. Now, I know that's not a personal decision. It's purely a timetabling decision. We are, what? Is it next Saturday week, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's 12 days from an election. I'm not going to actually jump up and down and go, he's trying to miss. Can you clear a calendar? Yes, but then you have to disappoint other people who are already booked in. Is it possible? Yes, but 12 days out from an election, if people you know personally can't make time to come on and talk to you, even if you are the number one news commentary show in the country, then I can understand them not being able, because it could, to find time in Luxon's timetable, because it won't just be, oh, we need you for an hour. It's like getting to Christchurch, there's the setup, there's the prep, there's the time afterwards. It's going to basically be a half day knocked out. And a half day, 12 days out from an election, having to find it, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon to say, oh, he's skipping out, he's chickening out. But equally, I will say everyone can change their timetables if they had to. I always say to people who I work with or who I live with, sort of thing, it's like who feel obliged to do something. I'm like, well, if you had a car accident on the way home and you broke your leg and were in hospital, you wouldn't be doing that thing. In other words, you can always change timetables. Should he change timetables is actually the question. Let's have a look at the story which talks about that issue and others. This is from News Hub this evening.
Why did Christopher cross the road? Is it, as Labour claims, to get away from the debate?
So it looks like he's being slippery. It looks like he is chickening out.
It is utterly infantile and stupid. The only person who has pulled out of a leaders' debate,
much like my fake laugh,
is the leader of the Labour Party and our Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins. That is facile and infantile, much like the Labour.
but he's right. Only one person has pulled out of a debate. I'm not saying he shouldn't have pulled out, obviously, but unfortunately he's right.
Luxon did pull out, though.
What?
He's pulled out of the debate.
No, he isn't, because the debate was tomorrow. And Hipkins pulled out, and they're trying to reschedule a debate. There's no debate to be pulled out of yet. They're trying to find a new time to do the debate that Hipkins pulled out of from tomorrow. So technically, Luxon hasn't pulled out. So technically, the fake laugh aside, what he says is accurate.
Party.
Chris Hipkins had to pull out of the press debate tomorrow because he was thrown a campaign COVID curveball, taking him out of action until Friday.
Chris Hipkins has come down with COVID. Everybody knows that that's really unfortunate. He's making himself available next week when he's out from isolation. Chris Luxon should be there and debate him if he wants to be the Prime Minister.
The latest lie today is that the National Party has pulled out of a leaders' debate when the leader of the Labour Party, the Prime Minister, has COVID and therefore can't make the pre-arranged leaders' debate.
Staff, which owns the press.
I wonder if they offered to move it online. I mean, that could have been a possibility as well. But then again, if you've got COVID, he said he was feeling pretty. Oh no, here we go. Kind of saying that I didn't hear this, but Chipkins offered a Zoom debate option.
Chipkins.
So, all right, fair enough. So there's an option.
And Labour have been trying to lock in another match next week. In a statement, staff said Mr Luxon's team have been unable to provide any alternative dates. Thousands of people were looking forward to seeing both leaders in person in the only South Island debate. It'll be a huge disappointment to a great many people if this cannot go ahead. Though National's campaign chair says there are other debates they can watch.
Guess what? People on the South Island have TV.
It's the only debate that happens in front of a very large live audience.
One per
it's also
street.
The only debate that focuses on South Island issues.
The press debate is a campaign.
TV in the South Island still turns off at 11 o'clock with a little kiwi going up a thing and it jumps into, and that's. And
I'm looking forward to seeing
turns on
the
at 1 in the
moon
afternoon.
fixture. It first came to be after the earthquakes and is usually a rowdy affair in front of a huge, boisterous Cantabrian audience. It's led to memorable moments and missteps.
Show me the money!
And with Hipkins' case of the COVID curse, his team's having to play saucy-loving stand-ins.
We have a rift in the party.
Though controversially, Pene Henare likes it straight.
Everyone's either a diagonal or straight kind of guy. I'm a straight kind of guy.
The Subbins today promising that if Labor is re-elected, it would speak to supermarkets about what they needed to increase competition.
The new bit is that you're going to have some conversations, some yarns with some supermarkets.
No, we've said that we could remove regulatory impediments, we could provide financial assistance, or we could actively look for locations where they could locate their new businesses.
But when it comes to the press debate, the Nats won't settle for a Hipkins stand-in.
No, we're not getting into this. I mean, Chris Luxon is not going to sit down and debate Calvin Davis in Christchurch tomorrow.
The only option for them is mano a mano, head-to-head, leader to leader.
People are assessing Chris Luxon against Chris Hipkins, and he's not going to debate any old random Joe Schmo in the Labor Party.
He is running scared from the debate. He should just make sure he can find a date next week. We've offered alternatives. He can do the same and the debate can go ahead.
So here's a fair point. This is what we do on the show, right? I've got point, counterpoint, point, because even in my own point that I just made, Hipkins has cleared space. So back to that point that you can clear space. I mean, Hipkins will have to have changed his whole last 2 weeks because everything that he was supposed to be doing this week is now off the table. So if he can do it, then Luxon can do it. You know, I don't know. We'll get to the end of the story, then we'll have a bit of a chat. And interesting what the people are saying in the conversation, in the chat, sorry, about should he or shouldn't he? Because there's also from this conversation the political aspect, Chewy. Should Luxon debate or not? We'll talk about that as well.
Labor says it's because Luxon is running away from the greater debater, the debate goat, leading to the chicken cries.
Christopher Luxon is running scared from Chris Hipkins. That's what's happening.
For the Labor Party to claim that National is therefore pulling out of a debate that they themselves have said they cannot attend is absolutely ridiculous.
Perhaps no debate tomorrow, but certainly a big debate over that debate today.
There you go. So should there are people after the last debate, and speaking of debates, you can watch the next debate right here at Thursday, but last week, who said that even though I think most will agree that Hipkins won the debate, the first leaders debate, there was a lot of commentators who were saying all that Luxon had to do was not fall on his face, and he didn't. And in the second debate, because Hipkins is now behind the 8 ball. I mean, as we've said, it's still game on in the election, but it is National ahead by more than a nose. That the roles had skipped. All of a sudden, it was Hipkins having to be the kind of scrappy underdog, even though he's the Prime Minister, and push, fight, push to get space. And Luxon, who was a bit more, ponderous and statesmanly, not my word, I'm just saying what people were saying. And so thinking about that, should Luxon debate? Forget, is he a chicken, but from a political point of view, Chewy, do you think, should he debate? Would it be good for him and for National to debate next week, or would that be a possible downside? Actually, and also remembering, there is another leaders debate next week anyway, Thursday night, TVNZ.
Yeah, look, the parochial South Islander in me says the South Island deserves one in front of a South Island audience. And the press debate has traditionally been a very good one. I think if the stories are to be believed, Hipkins has offered up a whole lot of alternative dates. Again, this is a gimme, right? You just go, well, that's unfortunate. He can't do it through no fault of his own. I would be best to accept whatever date I could make work, because you know that this is going to be the conversation, right? Yeah. Oh, you're walking away. You're scared after our dominant debate last week because we won, and now you're running away. And there is a bit of a narrative building around that about Luxon ducking out of interviews, not deeming it important to be interviewed by certain outlets and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean this is something that they could have easily put to bed by going, yeah, we'll take the first alternative date. We haven't confirmed that yet, but we're going to.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, like, to be honest, one of the things, like, we could be a 7-day-a-week show at the moment, 2 hours a day. There is so much news out there, and that's why I would, suggest you all follow us on Twitter, because during the day we're still putting stuff out there, we're still doing bits and pieces, but because we're 4 nights a week for 1.5 hours of 60 minutes of broadcasting.
It is Monday, so it's a 90-minute show.
We just can't get to everything, and I've seen some of the stories about Luxon walking out of things and not being involved. So you're right. So because we haven't done that on the show, it wasn't forefront of my mind. But there are other times where he has sort of either skipped out, wanted to skip out, or made noises of skipping out. So is that becoming a bit of a? It's what it is. It's like on the right at the moment, and we are obviously classifying National as on the right, but they're kind of the right light. Like, they're not the further right, which is ACT and New Zealand First with the words that they're using at the moment. There's been a breakdown of David Seymour the other week telling a journalist that he wasn't doing his job right because he was asking questions about an embarrassing candidate. Winston Peters, obviously, and Luxon's had examples of also kind of having a crack at the media. And it does bring me back to this conversation, which we're going to have shortly, about the Trumpian aspect to the right around the world at the moment, and how we're seeing it in New Zealand personified in Winston Peters, but leaching into those other areas as well. ACT more so, but still in the area of National and what they're trying to do, what they're doing, what's going on. It's fascinating. And in America, it seems not to be working. In New Zealand, it seems to be working.
Yeah. I mean, if there was something that I could put on the debates from last week that I think that they were definitely hits that landed, was tell us about your coalition partners. Tell us about those sort of things. And then over the weekend, there's been even more shit come out.
Yeah.
Or shit that's been clarified and run through a distillation process. And I think it would have been very tempting to go, oh, Chippy's got COVID, can't do the thing. Fuck, that's a bit of luck.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. It's not like they're going to lose time or lose schedule, because obviously this is time that Luxon can be doing something else, right? He doesn't have to worry about the debate for a day. I'm going to highlight a comment that I saw as well, because I'd be interested to hear what you think, Pat.
Before you do that, though, let me synopsize what I'm hearing you say. Tell me if I'm right. National loses nothing by not doing the debate, but Labour loses an opportunity once again to show up National. But National actually loses nothing, so why would they?
Yeah, but I almost think they've walked into this though, right? Yeah. By not doing the debate, they have given a gift to Labour, which is to smack them around with the fact that Luxon's a chicken and he's pulled out. We can't do the debate because of course we can't.
Yeah.
But we've offered up these dates, and National hasn't said yes to any of them. The better answer from National would have been, we haven't confirmed what date, but we're going to look at it, and if we can make it work, we can make it work. And they might be kicking the can down the road. Who knows?
That's
but
interesting.
It's a better answer than what they've given so far.
It was a very quick no. That's true. Like, if they had said, we'll come back to you, like if that had been the headline, different story. But it was a very quick no, which leads me to going, oh yeah, maybe. Anyway, what was your message?
So I saw this in the chat, and I thought it's an interesting point, right? Because they did say we're not going to offer up Luxon against Calvin Davis or some other lesser person.
Yeah,
we don't elect a prime minister; we elect parties. So in theory, a stand-in should be able to represent the Labour Party effectively.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Paul from the TikTok. You did good content, my friend. Love it.
We're big fans, Paul. We should connect. Yep. What are you doing on Thursday night, Paul? Come and watch the debate with us. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's a really good point, technically, but I don't actually agree we don't elect prime ministers, because I think that's exactly what we do. I think technically you're correct, but in practicality, people want to have a beer with someone, and so they elect. They put their vote to Jacinda or to Helen Clark or to John Key or to Luxon. They hate the other side, and so you're right That's what they do. That's what we do. We vote for the party. And we know that because if Luxon was to fall off the face of the earth a month after being Prime Minister, then the party still stays in. But I don't know if that's how we vote, Chewy. I mean, do we vote for the Prime Minister?
I agree. I don't personally like that, that people put so much stock in the leader.
Yeah.
And they, it becomes a popularity contest and all of that sort of stuff. But of course, an election is a popularity contest. So I realise what I've fucking just said there. But yeah, I would love it if Labour kind of went, yeah, so our main guy's down. Fucking any of us will have a go at you, bro.
We'll have a go.
We'll have a Calvin Davis. We'll have a Grant Robinson. Fucking pick one. It'd be interesting.
The other thing, I mean, I guess it's already done. I'm thinking about it like almost from a marketing point of view now, like the comms person I've got in the back of my brain to kind of go, well, we're available tomorrow. If for some reason he tests negative tomorrow morning, then we're there. We'll see you there. There's been organised. It's in our schedule for tomorrow. We'll be there tomorrow if you're available. If you can't, sorry, we don't have any other time in our schedule. I like to actually kind of say yes and rather than no but. But yeah. Anyway, let's have a look at another part. You've already brought it up about over the weekend what came out, because there was a story about New Zealand First having kind of crazy. It's crazy when these come out. More cookers in their camp, and scarily enough, one of them. And I did the numbers. If you get about 6% of the vote, this person will be in government or in parliament, potentially in government. At about 6%, maybe 6.2.
God damn it.
News Up can reveal NZ First's number 8, Tanya Unkovic, is a member of the Nuremberg trials channel on Telegram, which says the COVID vaccine was akin to the Nazis' war crimes.
Super good.
I'm not here to waste the public's time by answering your inane, stupid questions.
So there you go. And looking at this is the Trumpian, right? This is the Donald Trump sort of thing, basically telling the media that they're a bunch of fucking idiots.
War crimes.
I'm not here to waste the public's time by answering your inane, stupid questions.
ACT is now practically begging Kiwis not to vote for Peters in a new campaign video.
A choice of more of the same or chaos.
But News Up can reveal David Seymour has more of his own candidates to wrangle. His number 13, Ash Palmer, in 2020 commented on a Facebook rant about the New World Order that it sure effing sucks to be basically a pawn in a grand game we have no control over.
Back him 100%. The idea that we're going to start witch hunting and judging people on ancient Facebook comments when we've got an economy to fix, that doesn't stack up.
And I'm quite comfortable.
So what that is, again, we talked about this with National last week. What that is we will do anything for power. Like, okay, so they've said some horrific things in the past. That doesn't matter because I want to be the finance minister. Anything. Sorry, Chewy?
Lost in the ancient past of 3 years ago. So like this political term, ancient news.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. And my ability to be able to form good teams.
The idea of Christopher Luxon trying to rein in David Seymour and Winston Peters is inconceivable.
Also inconceivable, losing a leader to a COVID campaign curveball.
There you go. So that's I wanted to highlight that quickly. It's just a part of that story. That with Winston Peters comes literal people who believe that the vaccine is akin to what Nazis did in the 30s and 40s. Like it's Nuremberg. It's a direct parallel. It's not a metaphor when they talk about the Nuremberg trials. It's a direct comparison. It's not a simile. It's nothing like that. It is the same as what Nazis did in the Holocaust, because that's what the Nuremberg trials are all about.
Well, on that, I followed a couple of these Nuremberg groups for a little while now.
Oh yeah.
And it's hilarious. So, just a little bit of history, right? So we think of Nuremberg, we think of the end of World War II. Very important. They put a whole lot of Nazis on trial and they hung them for being Nazis. That is one part of it. There's another part, the Nuremberg Code, which came out of it, which was basically an agreement that doctors shouldn't do some of the horrible, fucking monstrous experiments that they did in the concentration camps.
Looking into people's brains and cutting caps of heads off and
trying to
all that kind of stuff.
stitch people together. Fucking crazy, just crazy shit. So that happened about the same time, but wasn't part of the Nuremberg trials. Okay, two separate things. But in these COVID conspiracy groups, they've conflated those two things.
Yeah.
But the big thing about it, in all of these Telegram groups that talk about the Nuremberg 2.0, there is one thing that they keep coming back to, and that is keeping lists of people, and those people are up for trials and executions. You cannot be part of those groups and have missed that part of the discussion. It is what they are all about. So to have a person that could sit in our parliament who thought it was a good place to be and a good discussion to have about fucking hanging public servants.
Yeah.
Like, people might say it's in the ancient past. People might not want to talk to the media about it. I don't fucking care. That is beyond the pale.
Yeah.
And I think it's a worthy thing to look at this person and go, well, hang on. This is what this person believed in, participated in. To what degree? Was it just japes, or does this person believe it? Like, those groups have unhinged our political discourse. They caused more just a same level of cultural schism that the Springbok tours did. We'll be talking about this for decades.
Wow.
So, yeah, someone like that waltzing into potentially a cabinet position or into the House at all is fucking concerning. It's right to be questioned.
Number 8 on the list. And I did the numbers today. I had a look back at a few previous elections. Like the Greens got, I think, 8 in at about 6.2% one of the years. So 6%ish gets you about 8 people, and she's number 8. And I mean, I listened to Media Watch RNZ over the weekend talking about what we always talk about, how TV3 is like, oh, and Winston's back. And they kind of went, just maybe we'll wait till election day to make that decision. You know, one or two polls that are within margin of error, let's just wait and see. They sort of did the same thing. But if the polls pan out to be accurate, like the last few polls have had Winston sort of at 5 or between 5 and 5.5, there's not much further to 6%, which would get someone in who, is down for Nuremberg 2.0. Now, the other thing about that, and I actually, it's a bit like Trump in America, actually, sort of the democratic process kind of ended up keeping Trump in check first time around. Like, he didn't pass too much or do too much. I mean, there were some things that happened, obviously, with the Supreme Court that led to some pretty horrific decisions, but democracy didn't fall over. So I guess I kind of feel like if Ms. Nuremberg 2.0 does get in, I think democracy in New Zealand, the way Parliament operates, will mean none of her views will be able to impact legislation. But the idea of it, look, it's a bit like the Lauren Boeberts of the world, or the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world getting into government. It's because there's an audience for them now, and they're getting in. That in and of itself is an indictment on the population on some levels, or on the process on some levels. But once they're in there, what can they do? Well, Lauren Boebert can give her boyfriend on the first date a hand job in a stage show. That's about as much as she's got achieved in the last couple of terms. But I just think I think this idea of who are you bringing with you, Mr. Luxon, Mr. Peters, who are you bringing with you, Mr. Seymour, who are you bringing with you? And it's not pretty. It's not a pretty sight as to who they're bringing with them. And it's concerning. Now, that's taking a bit of a pause here because I want to also address another conversation that came in, because it's a fair question. Blair asks us, here's a question for you, Chewy. I've been a viewer for some time. I'm curious why all the bashing of the right-leaning political parties, and yet this current government has fucked most things up and achieved bugger all. Well, I disagree with that statement. And you obviously haven't, maybe you have been a viewer for some time, but there has been many, many nights and many, many episodes and many, many parts of many, many episodes where we have been absolutely brutal on the left and continue to be so. We are very overt with where we sit. We sit on the left. but I think we call pitches and strikes. If the left requires a beat up, we beat them up. If the right requires congratulations, we congratulate them. And our bias, and this is the thing, right? People are like, I've seen this in chats a few times, as in the YouTube chats. You know, how about some balance? Why all the bias? I'm like, no. If this is a commentary show, we're commentators. We're not journalists.
We're not journalists.
And the thing is, every commentator has bias. We're just honest about ours. Like, the others aren't honest. You know, they will say that they are, you know, down the middle, or they will say this. We're just honest with where we come from. And to be honest with you, we're looking quite intently at the debate at the moment and at the policy at the moment. And I see terrible policy on the right. So we're going to call it out. I see boring, inane policy on the left, and we'll call that out. But if you had the choice, right, let's say you were going in a plane flight, you know, between Auckland and Wellington, and one of the flights was dangerous, a dangerous flight for whatever reason, and one was boring, which would you pick? I'd take the boring flight than the dangerous flight. And it's the same. It's like, I think the left is especially Labour, unbelievably boring at the moment. They're not inspirational. They don't feel like the kind of leadership I want to follow into battle. I look at the Māori Party, I look at the Greens, and they're not in the same camp, right? I see inspiration and things to follow, and there's something to vote for. I look at the right and I think, fucking hell, there is genuine danger in some of those policies. There is fear mongering going on. There is race baiting going on. And that's how we see it. Well, that's how I see it. Yep. Chewy, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, if I could answer, I answered it very briefly in the chat, but I'll expand on it a little bit, right? As Pat said, we've been very, very critical on Labour. I have found them boring, uninspired, and they haven't reached for the heights that they could have reached for. They didn't use their mandate that they were given last 100%. Time round. There's been a couple of really devastating things, and I think at the start of this campaign, they're really phoning it in and just not picking up things that were there for them to pick up, like the broad support on a wealth tax, or looking at what the Greens were doing and going, well, you know, we could take maybe not as strong a position because they've set the limit, right? And we could be the more reasonable thing, but we'll use that to advance our cause a little bit. And they've ruled too much stuff out. And I think the reason that we're so harsh on the right is because we're on the left, right? Some of their fundamental stances, like coming down hard on beneficiaries rather than going after tax cheats, as an example. Yeah. Going back to their ideas cupboards for policies that have been tried and shown to fail internationally multiple times. Trying to bring back policies that have objectively made the landscape here in New Zealand worse for more people, and just doing that for political points because they know it'll play well with the base. For, you know, I've said, even if you're on the right, I think, in my opinion, you should be just as angry with them, because National have not brought their A game. They have been phoning it in because they've been sitting there going, man, a lot of people are unhappy with Labour at the moment for various reasons. We don't even have to try. We're going to get this guy that's been with Air New Zealand, who's been here for about 5 minutes. We're going to chuck him in the top job. Job done. Real easy. Yeah. They've come up with tax policy seemingly on the back of a Bellamy's napkin. They haven't workshopped it. They haven't made sure that it hasn't been tried before and ruled out by John Key's government. They brought out fucking, you know, boot camps. They got slammed for that last time and it didn't work. You know, they are phoning it in.
Yeah.
They are short-term thinkers. And that's why I look, we said this last week, right, Pat? Objectively, we'll probably be fine whatever the government is, right?
Pretty much.
But there are people who do not have a podcast, that do not have people in their corner, that are just going to get fucking slammed by the right. These policies that these guys are talking about, the people that they're whistling to, their coalition partners are coming in and they're literally full of people that sound like they wanted to be on the front lawn of Parliament with the gallows being set up. That's concerning. We should be furious that they're talking to that. That should rule people out. You know, why the fuck is anyone talking to Winston Peters? Why is he going? I saw on Twitter, he said, oh, well, Luxon can't do the debate.
Yeah,
I'll happily debate Chris Hipkins. And I wanted to go, mate, you're within the margin of error of being irrelevant again. Why the fuck would anyone break their stride to talk to you? You're the ghost. I don't want any of your ghost chips, man.
Yeah, bro. Here's what I just wrote down while you were talking. We criticize the shit out of the left based on what we want to see and they're not doing. And we criticize the shit out of the right of what we don't want to see and they are doing. Because we're on the left. So if you're on the right, then the reason you probably see us as being unfair is that we're criticizing the right for doing things that we don't want to see. That might be things that you do want to see. But that's where we sit. So we criticize both sides, but we criticize the left because, for example, and I think me and Terry are in the same camp as this, they didn't put through cannabis reforms when they had a majority. They could have been a completely different, we could have been a completely different country. So we criticize them for that kind of stuff. We criticize the right for doing things like national standards. We don't want to see that. So the left for things we do want to see they didn't do, and the right for things we don't want to see that they either did do or in the election cycle are promising to do. Anyway.
And it's really clear. National have clear ideological links with the Conservatives over in the UK and the lobby groups that pull for them, and clear links with the right wing over in Australia too. So you can see whose homework they've been reading, and you can look at those countries and see how those policies played out in their countries. And I'm sorry, the UK is a fucking disaster.
Yep. And we will be... Remember when Brexit came through, and then the days after, I've talked about this before, all the headlines were saying remorse and regret, because all the people who were voting to just get rid of those hippy-dippy losers and, UK number one, then when they realised actually they've fucked themselves for travel, they've fucked themselves for trade all through the EU, that there was regret and remorse. And I wonder, 18 months into a 3-year term, if there will be a whole bunch of people going, oh, maybe this wasn't the move that we thought it would be. I don't know what the equivalent would be, the regret and remorse, but, there we go. Hey, we're going to keep going because we've got our feature conversation, which we haven't even started yet, which is Winston Peters. And we've got a couple of clips from Winston Peters we're going to play. As I said, honestly, this could be 3 or 4 shows just going through this conversation. But the first clip we're going to talk to is where Jack Tame was challenging Winston Peters on Winston Peters wanting to have gang prisons. Now, it's very, 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 very important that you listen to the language that Winston Peters does. And this is the Trumpian thing. He says something, like at the start, he doesn't know how many gang members there are in prison. And then later in the same part of this conversation, he claims to have said something else 3 minutes ago. And luckily, Jack calls him out on that. He says something like, let the record show. But what he says he doesn't know, then he tries to say why he doesn't know it. And then he says he does know it, all in the space of one kind of 3 to 4 minute conversation. So remember, Jack Tame, how much will it cost? How many people is it serving? How are you going to do that? That's pretty much what he asks all through this conversation. And I don't think a single question gets answered. So we're not going to do all of them. We're going to do this one, and we're going to do one from the very end.
I want to start with policy this morning. New Zealand First will establish a dedicated gang prison. How many prisoners will that hold?
Well, it'll hold the number that's required to be held because...
So there's the first answer. How many will it hold? The number that's required to be held. I'm just, my interest, how do you make a budget for that? The number that is required to be held. That's the first answer.
What we don't want to do is see the recruiting going on in prisons now.
So he's already moved away from the answer.
Corrections officers tell me it's totally possible. It'll actually work, and so I believe them because of their experience. We're also going to make sure we increase their correctional capacity as well. But we're going to not go on any further with a recruitment process which is destructive to young Maori, particularly first in prison, who are then coming out as ready to be graduated as full gang members.
So how many people will it hold?
Yeah, back to it.
Well, hold the required number that there is now.
And what is the required number?
If you just go and have a look now, this is not complex. Ask yourself how many gang members are in prisons now.
I'm asking you, how many gang members are there in prison now?
Well, it depends what you talk about.
How many gang-affiliated prisoners are there in New Zealand prisons, according to Corrections now?
No one has that record.
Oh, Corrections does. 2,700.
Oh, I thought it more than that.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's why I didn't. Well, I would have thought it'd been 3,000 at the very least.
Okay, so real clear here. He said no one has that number. Jack Tame says Corrections do. Jack Tame says 2,700, and then Winston, out of nowhere, pulls out the number 3,000. I would have thought it would have been 3,000. Important to remember that order. Winston said no one has that number. Jack Tame said 2,700. That's from Corrections. Winston then said, well, I would have thought it would have been more like 3,000.
But when I talked to them, they said they weren't certain of it. That's why I'm not giving you an answer now.
Blaming someone else?
So you're going to build a new prison to hold 3,000 people?
We're going to have people in prison building prisons.
Okay. Prisons are going to be built. Remember that? Prisons are going to be built. From prisoners are going to be building prisons. People in prisons building prisons. That's exactly what he just said.
I saw offshore in Greenville, South Carolina, and I thought, this is
great.
South
Carolina.
Now they've got people getting skills, they're working, and they're actually doing something for society.
You're going to build a prison that will hold 3,000 people?
No, we're going to get people building units, type of security prefab units that I saw internationally.
Building.
And it's a wonderful idea. And
so he's still talking about prisoners building units
to take a job when they get out.
So
prisons
let's think about that.
Prisons about punishment and rehabilitation.
So you think we need to hold 3,000 prisoners? So that would be 3 Mount Eden prisons, 3 Remutaka prisons. How much will it cost to implement this policy?
Good question.
Well, much less than it's costing now.
How much will it?
How much will it cost? Less than it's costing now. So to build new prisons to put gang members into will cost less than it's costing right now. That's the answer.
Cost.
Oh, look, I'm not going to sit here and have a fiscal argument with you when you don't know what you're talking about. The prison officers that I saw, back New Zealand's first proposal, they said it will work. And if it happens, they say we will have far less reoffending.
Mr. Peters, it's entirely reasonable in an election campaign, given this is your policy, to ask how much these new prisons will cost.
Well, look, if you knew that, you would know that Kelvin Davis...
Do you not know that?
Kelvin Davis has been asked that question, and he doesn't know.
I'm asking you. It's your policy, Mr.
No, if
Peters.
the minister in charge of corrections doesn't know, and the system doesn't know, how would you know?
How much does it cost to hold a prisoner a year?
Well, now, that varies between 125,000 to, they say, 195, 200,000.
Right.
Now, that cost... That variable is of concern to me because it's far too big a range.
So how much does it cost to hold a prison, to build a prison that would hold 3,000 people?
The fact of the matter is that there are prisons now that can do that as we speak.
Okay, so now he's talking about prisons that are already there. Remember, a minute ago, they were building prisons and they were building prefab buildings. Secure prefab building. And now he's talking about there are already prisons that can do this.
Just got to make sure we assign them to there.
Assign to the current buildings.
So you're not actually going to develop a new prison. You're going to reassign some of our current prisons.
Work it out, Jack.
It doesn't sound like there's a lot of detail in this policy.
Jack. There are 2,000 spare beds now in our prisons. So we've got more than 2/3 of the way there already, just as we speak.
That's actually completely, in fact, incorrect as well, because the prisoners that he's talking about are already in prison. So the 2,000 spare beds aren't for a new 3,000 prisoners coming in. They're already for prisoners who are within the system, which are the prisoners he's talking about. But for some reason, he's now going, they're going to build prisons, they're going to build prefabs, we're going to utilize the beds that are already there because we can fit them in there because there's 2,000 spare beds, except we're talking about prisoners that are already in prison, so they don't need those 2,000 spare beds because they're already in the prison. And when Jack says...
Perfectly clear.
But when Jack says there doesn't seem to be too much thought into this, he's completely right.
So now, if you take out from one prison that capacity, you're going to get there. But when Mr. Davis was asked this question, the minister in charge of corrections, not you, he didn't know.
Mr. Peters, this is your policy. I asked you how many prisoners in New Zealand had gang affiliations. You didn't know. I asked you how much it would cost. You didn't know.
I said to you that it was 3,000. You said it's 2,700. I don't believe that.
Actually, the record will show that you said that information doesn't exist in IG.
So there's the point. That's why I wanted us to all be aware of the order. Winston Peters, 2.5 minutes later, is trying to retell history from 2.5 minutes ago, maybe forgetting that those big camera things also record. by saying, I said it was 3,000. No, he said nobody knew. Jack said 2,700, then Peter said 3,000, and he's already trying to rewrite history. Within the history he's making right now, as to the history of this is the worst Q&A interview there's ever been. That's the history.
Check with
Well, no.
It does exist.
Because,
I've got another question for you regarding another policy.
Stop right here. Stop right here. I'm not going to be talked over here. I've been going to prisons as a young lawyer from a long time, watching and seeing prisoners and seeing Bremerhaven and all
back
over
in
the
the
state
early
and doing
1800s.
internationally. The prison officers, when I spoke to them, they said they don't know exactly, but they thought it was that figure. And that's why I wasn't going to go and use it.
It's surprising.
Sorry, I can smell the bullshit, Mr. Peters. You spoke to a prison officer, a corrections officer, and asked them how many gang members there were. They didn't know, which means you didn't investigate any further. Which means you didn't go to corrections to find out these answers. You asked the guys who were looking after the inmates, and because they didn't know, you thought, well, no one knew, and I'm not going to make it up. I think you probably are making it up, Mr. Peters.
Surprising, given your experience in prisons, that you wouldn't have developed some sort of fiscal detail around a policy of this significance.
Well, I have, actually.
Okay, well, how much will it cost?
The fact is, there won't be greater cost.
How much will it cost?
Can I just say...
No, you can't.
No,
you can tell us how much it will cost. This is your policy. You've complained in this campaign
Look, I'm not here having...
You've complained in this campaign already that people haven't asked you about detail.
We won't have amateur hour based on what you don't know.
By all means, Mr. Peters, inform us.
I'm answering you. Well, if you'll just keep quiet for a second, take a Valium, and realise we're only 2 weeks away from the election. If the corrections officers didn't know with certainty, if the Minister of Corrections didn't know at all, then how can you be so certain of that?
Because corrections
that's my point. There's so much going on in this election campaign where the numbers are being thrown around and they're not true.
That's what we're going to use for now. That's the first part of the interview. That's 5 minutes into a 26-minute interview. You get the idea, Cherry, of what's going on. And every question is like that. It's like I said, we could have been here the whole week doing a Winston special. Like we honestly could be. And that's what it is. And I don't know quite how to say this. It's a bit of a personal story maybe, but my darling father who passed away, a few months ago, he was getting to a stage in his life where things weren't quite as clear as they once were. Now, first of all, I'm not suggesting that Winston Peters has any form of mental decline at all. I'm not making that assumption. But what I see in Winston's is what I was seeing at my dad towards the end, where if anyone showed him something different, there was like, what are you talking about? How dare you? My dad had a little bit of that because he was declining. I'm not saying Winston Peters is, make that clear so no one clips this, but I see that same kind of how dare you question me in Winston. And that's why I say it feels Trumpian, and it's revolting, Chewy. It's utterly revolting.
I'll also red flag him for something we've been talking a lot about in the last couple of weeks, is that it certainly sounds like a simple answer to a complex question.
Yeah, he's got no details behind it.
Like anyone that's going to come up with policy around prisons because of something he saw in South Carolina, like chain gangs. Are we talking about forced labor again? Like, not super keen on that, Mr. Peters, just because you were there when it was invented.
There's another part of the conversation, and we're not showing it because we can't show it all. There's another part of the conversation where they have a one-line, like literally a one-line policy that talks about providing care for elderly people, and Jack asks him, how many people are you providing this care for? And he won't answer it. And he starts talking about the workers, and he starts talking about them paying the carers more. And Jack's like, no, but for us to know how much it's going to cost you, you need to know how many people are going to be cared for. Not how many carers there are, how many people are going to be cared for. And Jack does the numbers there and then, and he basically says if it was going to be 10% of the retired population, it would be something like $6.8 billion a year, your policy. And New Zealand First hasn't done those numbers. It's fairly obvious. In this conversation, they talk about their fiscal report, and he says to Jack Tame that will be released later on today. We're going to finish tonight's show. I've got one other clip to play for you first, but later on, in about 5 or 6 minutes, with the response to that, because funnily enough, Chewy, the numbers didn't come out that Winston was promising. You'll be surprised. Let me show you this as well. I'm not going to play all of this. You can go to my Twitter feed if you want to have a look, but I made this clip and it's like 6 minutes long, and it's got
New Zealand had gang affiliations.
all the
have amateurs in.
Will you fund? Your policy. New Zealand First will fund residential care for the aged. How many people will you fund?
I've just given you the figure of care workers alone, and I can't...
I'm not asking about care workers. I'm asking about the aged people who will receive the care. How many people will receive the care?
Well, if you had any understanding of the situation, it's the people that care for them that are going to be the cost.
No, you can tell us how much this policy will cost.
Could I just finish off?
You can tell us how much the policy will cost.
Can I finish off my answer?
If you please tell us how much the policy will cost. It's a straight question.
Can I just tell TV1? You're a taxpayer-owned operation.
Here comes the Trumpian. Maybe we will play. There's only 3 minutes.
The
Trumpian side of it.
Are you thinking you're going to do what you did last time? Would you do that? Tell me you're going to do that before I answer.
Mr. Peters, it is a straight question.
Are you going to keep quiet while I answer the question?
Okay, according to Eldony, the average cost per person is $1,400 a year.
We're not moving on.
So there are currently 865,000 New Zealanders over the age of 65. So if just 10% of the over 65 population receive residential care as per your one-sentence policy, New Zealand First will fund residential care for the aged, the cost to New Zealand taxpayers would be $6.2 billion a year. Mr. Peters, I asked you how many prisoners you would hold in your new prisons. You couldn't answer. I asked you how much it would cost. You couldn't answer. I asked you how many people you would care for in your residential care policy. You couldn't answer. I asked you how much it would cost. You couldn't answer. The report was due back in August of 2019. Why would a genuinely concerned,
this is about co-governance now,
competent minister not demanded to have seen the report at that point?
Look, this is wasting everybody's time. This is a waste of...
That's a great question.
This is a waste of your viewers' time. This is contempt for the democratic process.
But what about your role in this? Wouldn't a diligent minister who was concerned about co-governance have chased up the report while in Cabinet?
So I was concerned about co-governance. I'm opposed to co-governance.
Exactly.
Jack, I know you're desperate, but you're not going to stop this surge in our campaign now with lies and deceit.
Mr. Peters,
I'm sad to see that you're part of it now.
Mr. Peters, I think we all understand the tactic. You come in here, you huff and puff and hurl insults around. I get it. For people at home, it might be entertaining. These are serious times worthy of serious leadership. If you are unable to answer straight questions about your policy, your competence and your integrity, that's on you. Winston Peters, if you were so opposed to co-governance, why did your government oversee the earliest stages of co-governance provisions in Three Waters?
Oh, here we go. This is amazing.
What do those rich listers who've donated to your party want for their money?
We're not corrupt like you. You're on this program trying to get rid of New Zealand First because your masters told you to.
I'm asking.
I got news for you, Jack, and your masters. The people out there will decide this election, and the news for your masters is all bad.
If you make it into government...
What a waste of my time is to be here.
Do you intend to promote tax breaks or government funding that could financially benefit people connected to the racing industry?
No, I've never done that.
When you were last in government, you used the Provincial Growth Fund to fund 3 synthetic racetracks at a cost to taxpayers of more than $10 million. And here's a quote from government officials at the time, quote, "The proposed Riccarton Park synthetic racetrack is located in Christchurch City, which is ineligible for PGF funding. You and Cabinet still signed it off. You gave a tax break to the racing industry worth almost $5 million. So will you oppose any new funding or tax breaks for the racing industry?
This is astonishing, Jack. You're being exposed for the dirt merchant you are. It's so sad.
It's a simple question. The way that politics should be run in a democracy is that those who are in powerful positions or wish to be in powerful positions should answer straight questions.
Start with you.
Your position today is that you oppose vaccine mandates, but in 2021, let's have a look at this. You said on your social media platforms, no jab
I've owned up to that. No,
means
sorry.
no dole and no
I didn't
parole.
put that post up, and the people that put the post up, I said at the time, later on, I'm apologising for that, and thereafter I made sure I watched every post every day.
So you expect us to believe that somehow someone close enough to you to be trusted with your social media somehow completely misunderstood your position when it comes to vaccine mandates. Understood it so much that even though you oppose vaccine mandates, they put a post up saying no jab means no.
You know, I've owned up to it. I said it was a mistake. I said I'm sorry, and I've made sure that it never happened again.
But who was it? Who put up the post?
Well, I'm not going to tell you who that person is.
Is that person in the room with us now, Winston?
So I guess we will watch it. Most people I saw people in the chat saying it's good, so I let it play. Now that's on my Twitter feed right now. If you want to go, and I missed out the first 2 minutes because the first 2 minutes was actually what we had just showed you, clips from the thing about prison. However, what we didn't show you was how it all finished up, and how it all finished up was the conversation at the very end, which goes for about another 4 minutes. But I'll do that in a sec, because we've got 2 more little bits to play. Is there anything else, Chewy? We're kind of in between everything at the moment. I don't know if even that's a fair representation of the conversation. Like I said, the first time I edited it, it dropped out about 10 minutes, and that's 6. So I dropped about another 12 minutes that's in there as well.
Can I ask a question? Do you have the Philadelphia lawyer comment?
I don't, but do people know what that means? Do we know what that means?
Well, I've got the explanation queued up in the hope that you had it.
Okay,
so,
I don't know. I don't think I've got it unless it comes up in this last clip. So why don't we just go to the last clip?
In the scale of everything so far, it's a small shot, but I'm going to take it because I'm a small petty man.
Now, just think about this, right? Whatever you do for a job, even if you're at school or university or whatever, if me and you had an argument, right? And I said, okay, well, I'm going to make sure I become the person who's senior to you, right? If me and you had an argument, let's say you work in a dairy, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to make sure I buy this dairy. Or if you're at university, well, okay, if that's how you think, I'm going to make sure I become the head of the department that you're studying at. Would you take that as a threat? I think most people probably would. Winston Peters hasn't been called on this very much today, but without question, he makes a threat to TVNZ because Jack Tame has called him on all his horse shit. That comes towards the end of this clip. Let's just get this last part of the conversation.
I want to finish by asking about
What a waste of time you are on this interview.
Your candidate...
The people want to know what the selection about the policies, but you've just turned into a vindictive attack.
Mr. Peters, your candidate Rob Ballantyne said this about Māori.
I knew we'd go there. He didn't say it about Māori. I stopped lying. He said it about the disease, the virus of co-governance.
I'm going to quote Rob Ballantyne.
You're not going to repeat Hipkins' lie to me as he did the other day.
I'm going to quote Rob Ballantyne here, Mr.
Being sucked in by it.
I want to. So he said this about Māori. Quote: "Cry if you want to. We don't care. You pushed it too far."
He didn't say that about Māori for the umpteenth time. Stop lying.
We are the party with the cultural mandate and the courage to cut out your disease and bury you permanently. Does his view represent that?
No, stop lying, Jack. He didn't say that about Māori. He said about the disease and the virus of co-governance, and I've made that speech. In hall after hall, packed to the wall by a stack of Māori in the audience as well, all agreeing with me.
That might make sense, but
really? And we're not going to have amateur hour with you telling me what Māori think.
That might make sense, Mr. Peters, that explanation, but for one word. The word is you. I will quote him directly. I've been back and watched the tape. He said,
I've watched that tape as well.
Bury you permanently. Not bury it, not bury co-governance, not bury the concept, bury you. He was also asked about his comments by Stuff.
Just notice in this point, Winston's not pushing back. You notice that? Like, he's not pushing back. I suspect he's going, fuck, what do we do here? Like, he has been jumping. But when Jack says this, the word you, and then goes on to talk about Stuff, Winston's not pushing back. I wonder what's going through his mind right now.
And Mr. Ballantyne himself added context. He said this: "I was not talking about mainstream Māori. I was talking about the disingenuous Māori elite. It's the likes of Willie Jackson." Rob Ballantyne, when given an opportunity to add context to that statement, agreed that it was about people, not about a concept. That quote was about human beings.
I have spoken to Mr. Ballantyne. He has been going off my speeches, and I've always connected the cancer of the co-governance, which is destructing our democracy, where one vote is no longer the same, connected it to democracy itself, and I've then connected to the people who are out there. He's elite, self-appointed, like the Party Māori, which is probably going to go down this campaign and won't be in Parliament. Here's the Party Māori making all these demands, right? They say that
God, I'd love that to be
70%
reversed.
of the population, yet they're only polling about 1.5, which means that a mass majority of Māori do not want them.
I'm going to read that quote once more. And you out there,
Mr.
Peters,
you're
this
out
is
there,
the quote of your candidate. We are the party with the cultural mandate.
Traveller telling me a Māori.
And the courage. And the courage.
With a proud...
Notice how he just identified himself as a Māori? Have you ever, I'm not, and like, obviously he is, but have you ever heard Winston Peters feel the need to play that identity politics? I mean, he is the one who always talks against identity politics, yet in a moment where he's trying to gain a footing back against Jack Tame, he's basically saying, how dare you tell a Māori what a Māori is saying? And I've never heard that before from Mr. Peters. It's a really interesting dynamic. When's that?
The minor party debate.
Right.
When it was his main weapon against Te Pāti Māori and Greens, going, well, I'm a Māori and you don't speak for me, basically.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Let's get the last 90 seconds of this.
Background, what I should be thinking. This is extraordinary.
To cut out your disease.
How arrogant can you be?
And bury you.
How arrogant can you be? It's like yesterday's interview as well. I got a white person telling him, I've been here thousands of years, started the Ngāti Land Retention Committee, one of the biggest land cases ever.
Does your candidate
what Māori should think?
Does Rob Ballantyne know that it was your decision to put Labour in power that made the Māori elite he wants to bury Willie Jackson, the Minister of Māori Development? Is he aware that it was your decision?
Oh, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. My colleagues, for a start, all agreed, having had a talk with Bill English at the very opening of the negotiations, that we were in trouble going with National because there was going to be a spill on. They were out to roll Bill English, and we'd seen it all before. Everybody in my caucus at the time unanimously thought, well, we're in trouble, we've got to do this. And here you are now blaming me for Willie Jackson being the Minister of Māori Affairs.
Well, you chose Labour.
But he never had that in his manifesto.
Right.
Excuse me. And that was never part of our coalition agreement at all.
Excuse me. Nothing's happening.
It's what was happening covertly, hidden away from me. And Willie Jackson, bless his cotton socks, has said that. But no, Jack Tame and TVNZ, and I'm not believing Willie, who's got no reason to lie. You prefer to go ahead with the lie. And
Mr. Peters, I have one last question for you.
People are going to say to me, Winston, why did you bother to come here today? And I'm going to say, well, I stopped.
Mr. Peters,
I think democracy's about hearing both sides of the story, not hearing arrogant.
And he knows. He was there when they invented
people think they know more about this country.
Mr. Peters, you have railed against co-governance.
Thank you, Jack. You just made a hopeless case here. And it's a good case
you've railed against co-governance.
For us to make sure we get the broadcasting portfolio after this election.
Is that a threat, Mr. Peters?
No, it's not a threat. It's a promise that you're going to have an operation that's much more improved than what it is now. It's just an idea.
Thank you for your time.
What a
Good luck in the campaign.
Yeah, well, I believe that, Jack, like I believe half the other bull dust you just said.
New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters.
It's the laugh at the end, isn't it? So there you go. So that was the last kind of 60 seconds. That was the whole thing. And there's one more clip I'm going to show you. Just to round this all up, because part of the setup is that, Winston's becoming more and more Trumpian. This was from today's news. The whole thing about he's releasing his numbers. They was releasing the budget and he didn't do it. So TVNZ bailed him up and they said, you told us you were going to release them yesterday. You still haven't released them today. What's going on?
Just on the release of the New Zealand First Manifesto.
Look, I've had all set to go and these guys said, look, wait till the OCR out. That'll be the last thing that you need. And I thought, no, I can't wait. But
blaming other people.
Honestly, I think we have to, because there's such a movable feast in terms of people's calculations of affordability and cost. And it's a circus going on. I want to get it right.
So it's a change of your position from yesterday on Q&A when you did say it would be released yesterday, Sunday.
Sorry, but look, there it is there. But I'm not letting it go until I've got the final figures out. There it is, all pages, the whole lot.
Why did you yesterday? Why
You'd
did
be
you?
here for another 5 hours.
Yesterday, why did you say it would be released yesterday?
Because that's what they said to me. And then the last moment, the guy, somebody said to me, who really does know. He said, "I've got this one bit because I don't know what they're going to do. And if you do get this wrong, it'll look pretty silly by the leaders' debate on Thursday night."
People are voting already. Early voting has started. Yeah, Is it a bit late to get the manifesto out?
Well, now, you see, I've had all these meetings for 2 years, and if you'd been at my meetings, tell the public what I've been speaking about on all these subjects, they wouldn't have to get that information now. But you've turned up in the closing 11th hour because the surge is on.
I'm just asking if the manifesto should be out before early voting starts.
Of course it should be, but the OCR should be out as well. I don't know why they picked that date for the OCR to be there so discontented with the special votes.
So give us an idea.
Could you just clarify why the manifesto wasn't released yesterday? What was the issue?
I was told, look, the OCR is coming out. And
somebody else?
Wait and get a final readout because it could be some change. That change could be substantial. If there's a drag out of
that's utter horseshit. The OCR is going to do nothing. But, this whole thing, blaming other people, not me, not about me, some guy, someone else. When Trump does that thing and he puts the voice on and he goes, oh, and he said, sir, every time Trump says sir, when someone's talking to him, it's horseshit. That's his tell. Oh, someone said to me, sir, he said, sir. It's the same thing. Somebody else, this person, that person, somebody else. You should have been here. You weren't. Your fault. You know, it's just, he's gone from, and I'll say it again, I'll mea culpa a little bit. You know, I've been involved in several interviews with Winnie, and he's always fun, and I've said he's always fun to interview, but it's just gone.
This seems like something different, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
It's like he's always like I mentioned that his bullshit that was going on when I was 16, 17, 18, somewhere around there, prompted me to write my first letter to the Tipperary Herald as actually one letter of the week or something. Yeah, exactly. And it was for, you know, race baiting bullshit against Asians and that sort of thing. And you know, he's always been this combative, divisive guy. And every time I've spoken to someone that has had an opinion about New Zealand First, or maybe they've even voted for New Zealand First, as it's always been, well, he keeps things interesting and he likes to rattle people's cages and stuff like that. This is something different.
Yeah,
this is something different, and he's talking to a different crowd as well. I think his pivot to talking to, you know, the conspiracy crowd and that sort of thing, he's coming off mushy. He is coming off past his best. And when he doesn't have an angle, he'll go on the attack. And there isn't an answer there. And I think for people to go, oh, Winston's back, New Zealand First is back, these interactions should raise all sorts of red flags. It's like he's chucking out flares and smoke grenades of just bullshit to distract away from it. He shouldn't be getting this much attention. Like he's within the margin of error of getting in or not.
It's also free publicity. It's actually, again, talking about Trump, ironically, it's why one of the reasons Trump bet Clinton. I wasn't a fan of Clinton. She wasn't my pick. But one of the reasons is they have numbers on it. He got like $3 billion worth of free publicity or something. That's what Winston's getting at the moment. That interview, which I honestly think is one of the most repulsive interviews I've ever seen or heard, will get him votes. Because there'll be lots of people going, yeah, stick it to the man. You know, I've seen someone on Twitter today recutting Jack Tame's Twitter icon and giving him a new title, Philadelphian lawyer. So there is a sector of society that will actually help Winston get his vote from. And it's kind of also speaks to what do you do in the media when you give, I mean, you have to speak to Winston. TVNZ has to because he's possibly going to be there. Maybe not. But it's, it's just ugly. It's ugly. It's revolting.
So you mentioned Philadelphia lawyer.
Yep.
And this is one that jumped out at me because it's a very specific term and it's a very old-timey term as well, which made me laugh. So I thought, well, he's using it as a derogatory term to old Jack Tame, right?
Yep.
Do you know? Have you come across it before? Do you know what it means?
I hadn't, but I have looked it up since I heard it. Yep.
A Philadelphia lawyer is a term used to describe a lawyer who knows the most detailed and minute points of law and is an exceptionally competent lawyer. And its first usage dates back to 1788, I assume attributed to Winston Peters. So yeah, he's trying to pull off an insult, and an old fucking porridge brain has cocked that up. You know, there's some people in the chat going, "Oh, you know, he's a top operator." He's not. He has porridge as a main meal. I guarantee it. This is evening meal and off to nap. Like he's past his best.
Yeah.
You look on the balance sheet of what he has achieved for New Zealand, and there's the wine box and there's the gold card, and that's it. He's been there for decades on the public tat.
Unless you're in a specific group like the racing industry, they will say to him.
Now that's my whole takeaway from this, right? That stunned me. The fact that he absolutely wanted to be in charge of the racing industry, and I thought, of course he was. It's horse racing. He'd be there with his newspaper under his arm and his cigar. But to hear that he's been literally getting kickbacks to New Zealand First from people that have interest in the racing industry, to hear that funds were misappropriated out of the Regional Development Fund, which could have been a good idea. Like, it could have been. And to hear it's been frittered away on fucking race courses in Christchurch.
Yep.
That made me furious. There was the development here in Dunedin to reinvigorate our waterfront. That was supposed to come out of the Regional Development Fund, and that didn't happen. And to hear that it's gone to a race course, a synthetic race course of all fucking things, for the racing industry. Do you know why the racing industry needs propped up? Because it's a dying industry. That is corruption. To hear him threaten a TVNZ interviewer.
Well, all of TVNZ, really.
All of TVNZ, but definitely directed to Jack Tame.
Yeah.
That is standover tactics, and it's corruption. He's talking to the crowd that doesn't trust the media, and he wants to control the media. That is corruption.
Yeah, and like imagine if it was the other way, and like this is why it sounds Trumpian. Yeah, like Trump talks about when he points to the cameras down the back, and he talks about the what is this word? The misinformation. What word does he use? That stupid Trumpian term, whatever that term is.
Bull dust.
Just jumped. It just jumped out of my head. The untruth, whatever. Someone will say it in the chat before I finish the sentence. Fake news. That's what I'm thinking. Fake news. Fake news. And that's what he's doing. And Trump has already said that he's going to do stuff against broadcasters and broadcasters that, especially that disagree with him. And I was actually listening to someone online today saying, can you imagine if Biden came out and said, we're going to have an investigation into Fox News because, they don't like me. And basically Winston Peters has just done exactly what Trump did. Lots of people in the chat are also commenting on it. Cools TV was shocked when I saw the interview. Almost too hard to defend that one in the comments. You barely see any in the comments.
If you've got someone in your life that's thinking, oh, I'm going to give Winnie another go, I take the clips that Pat has done, or hell, sit down and watch the whole interview with them.
Yeah, good luck.
And go, really, dude? Yeah. You want to vote for that? You want to introduce that into Parliament?
That dumpster fire. Jack Tame owned Winston, and Winston spat the dummy because he was made to look like an unprepared cockwomble. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Blair says about my plane ride example that he'd take the dangerous one. Fair enough. Nicole says, I have no beard, but I cannot shave my legs if needs be. Yep, I think we should all be hairier for the election. Someone else, obviously this is a conversation in the chat. There's always Karen Plunkett if you're craving a far-right rant. Free Soul says we should put tinfoil hats into the merch. Nikki says busted again and again and again. Good work, Jack. And Fucking Fast says 11.5 have legitimate connections. That is not most prisoners. That's about the gang connections.
Yeah, this is the little bit of context there. Freeman, who has made some pretty broad statements in the chat with nothing to back it up, which is, whatever. But yeah, to say that most prisoners have gang connections is not true.
And a huge thanks to Fucking Fast for the $8.99 super chat. We appreciate that. We'll just leave that there for a little while. Well, that's all my stuff done for the night, Chewy. You got anything else you want to get out there before we sign off? Let us say, remind people that Thursday night is debate night, and it's the one I think, Chewy, you're most looking forward to because it's another, I was going to say all ages. I keep wanting to say all ages. It's an all ages event. It's an all parties event. It's
the Battle Royale.
Yeah.
It's all of them.
Yeah.
So you've seen what Winston's bringing to the party. If someone puts a snake oil tonic into him and he's awake enough, it'll be an absolute shit show. So I think it behooves everyone that we're there to see it.
Yeah. Well, we'll be here. Make sure you bring a friend. Good numbers in the chats tonight. Good numbers watching live, and we'll be here and remember Thursday night is 7 o'clock as well. So we'll be here 2 hours earlier on Thursday night and be with you for probably a couple of hours. I'm assuming it's going to be an hour and a half. They've all seemed to be an hour and a half. We'll figure that out through the week. You got something for us, Chewy?
Yep, something to leave on. It's not a tangent. That is a favourite of mine from the Facebook group showing artistic reimaginings of election bollards.
Okay, so that's been done post-edit. That's not actually live like that.
No, that's painted.
That's on the actual billboard.
I've seen a couple of pictures of this. That's Brian Tamaki and Sue Gray with tinfoil hats, clown makeups. There's a literal rabbit hole in Brian's chest. The sign says party vote, lunatic fringe New Zealand. We nuts them. We delulu now. Proudly brought to you by MAGA, Q, the KKK, and the greedy rabbit hole pastor and the anti-trans movement.
That is
fine work.
So just confirm for me, someone's painted that on a billboard. That's real. That's not just done in Photoshop.
No.
How the hell could anyone do that? Like the time that would take.
I've seen a couple of pictures of this billboard from several angles, and it's legit.
My God, that is so good. If you were Brian Tamaki, I'd want that in my garage. That's like,
probably because his eyebrows look fucking good.
Remember, Jacinda got a really good making over on one of her billboards, and it's still currently her Facebook image.
Oh yes, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Look, if that's real, I'm assuming it is because you say it is. I'm so impressed. I'm impressed because that would take hours. How do you do that at 2:00 in the morning, jumping over that wall to the right in case any time a car comes along?
I'm just saying you can go out and you can take a billboard from personal experience.
We're not saying that though.
Like theoretically, it's free real estate, but
definitely
if you brought it home and just gave it a little bit of a glow up, just make sure that Brian's eyebrows are on fleek, then you could go back and put it back up.
Which you shouldn't do. Very quickly getting off it now. Huge thanks to our patrons, new patrons coming on board. We've got Michael Gray, Nicole Abernethy, Chris Rowley, I think, was new as well. Chris McLaren in there as well. And I've seen there's actually a sign up tonight as well. You'll go on the billboard for tomorrow, but LNE, letter capital L, small n, capital E, LNE, signed up to be a patron tonight as well. If you enjoy what we do, if you want to support us, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Also remember, we need you guys to listen to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts. Just head to Apple Podcasts and search #BHN. Do a rate and a review for us while you're there. There are a couple of nefarious actors who are going in to try and bring our rating down. It's fine at the moment, it's 4.8 or something, but the more people we get to give us... well, actually, I shouldn't say give us a 5. Give us the rating you think we deserve, because that would be the fair thing to do. But when we stay up the charts, it also helps us get guests, and it gives us a presence in the mainstream media. So Apple Podcasts, #BHN, that's all you got to search for to find us, or Big Hairy News. And have a listen. We put clips on Apple Podcasts as well, so you can actually get the whole show. It's normally up there within about an hour of us finishing. Or we put clips on there as well. So like through the weekend, for example, people were listening to clips from the show from the week that's gone. So we do both full episodes and clips on our audio podcast version of this. #BHN on Apple Podcasts. Chewy, anything else, sir? Or are we done? You're just waiting for us to go over 1.5 hours, which we've done now.
We've done it now. So I've got nothing. I've got nothing left.
All right,
I am legitimately looking forward to the debate this weekend. This week. Look, we've been getting huge numbers on the debates. I've been approached by people that didn't know I did this, and they're starting to recognize me, which is fucking weird.
Our meetup. We should talk about our meetup. We had a meetup on Sunday. We've mentioned that. Hey to everyone who came to the meetup in Dunedin. We did it in real life meetup. Having some pizza and a drink at Moon's Bar and Restaurant.
Out in the meat space.
#no advert. We paid for our pizzas. So if you came along on Saturday, lovely to see you all, and I'm sure we'll do it again sometime soon. And other than that, I'll be getting out of here. We'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Remember, Thursday night we're at 7 p.m. And be well. #BHN on Apple Podcasts, patreon.com/Big Hairy News if you want to be a part of what we do. If you've ordered merch in the last week, it's at the printers now. I should have it either tomorrow or Wednesday morning, straight on the courier. Hopefully you'll have it by the end of the week. If not, depending on how fast the courier is, the beginning of next week. And I can breathe. All right, team. Lovely, lovely. All the best. We will catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo.
Late potatoes.